President Trump and his coronavirus task force continuing to give news conferences to keep millions of Americans updated on the COVID-19 pandemic. But there are some in the media who are calling for networks to stop airing them live. Watch.
I'm not actually sure, if you want to be honest, that we should carry that live. I think we should run snippets. I think we should do it afterwards and get the pertinent points to the American people, because he's never, ever going to tell you the truth.
It's obviously above my pay grade. I don't make the call that we take them or not, but it seems crazy to me that everyone's still taking them.
If it were up to me, and it's not, I would stop putting those briefings on live TV. Not out of spite, but because it's misinformation.
My next guest says it is good that President Trump is doing these press conferences, though he says maybe they should not be longer than 30 minutes. Fox News contributor and former White House press secretary Ari Fleischer, he joins me now. Ari, I think it's kind of strange that that somebody would not want to cover the president, because one of the things I find is that in these press briefings, sometimes the president buries the lead. So he has like these little news nuggets that he sprinkles throughout. And so I feel like you have to be paying attention the entire time.
Yeah, this is really distressing, Dana. The idea that in a crisis like this, there are people who don't want the president to be seen on TV, on live TV. It's not because he's accurate or inaccurate. It's actually because his ratings, his job approval is going up. That's the reason. If his job approval was going down, they'd be the first ones to insist on broadcasting it live. That's what's driving them. They just cannot stand to see the president have any type of success. But it's bad for a democracy
and
when people start calling on the media to censor the president at a time like this. It's not what we should be doing.
Right. Well, and it's also, we're talking about China, and at least you have a president of the United States who is out there every day taking questions from a lot of reporters for as many minutes as they want to go. And last night, just speaking of the international angle, Secretary Pompeo was talking about this critical need to get transparency underway and get accurate numbers from places like China. Listen.
When you hear doctors Fauci and Birx talk about risk, talk about fatalities, trying to think about how to model, what they need is data. They need data from Italy, they need data from China, they need data from Iran. We need every country to step up and provide accurate, transparent information. If we can't have that, if we have disinformation instead, there are more lives that will be at risk, not only today, but in the weeks ahead as we battle this enormous challenge.
I thought that was so interesting, because we are asking our health professionals to make decisions based on the data that they have. And we have to ensure that this data is accurate, not just for the United States, for the good of the world. And we have to, in some way, make China accountable for that, Ari.
No question. And I can't for the life of me understand why the press is tougher on President Trump than they are on President Xi. But they seem to be giving China a general pass for this, that their data is not complete data. Their reporting is inaccurate reporting. The fact the United States has now surpassed China. Well, who believes that? But the press reports it anyway, because otherwise they would have to challenge China. And they just don't seem interested in that. It's as if there's no upside to that bit of accurate or honest reporting. So again, there's many reporters are doing their best, asking scientific questions, asking substantive questions, but there's still too much of a strain in the media where they're fighting the last war, which is just politically confront anything and everything Donald Trump does and really give China a pass. That's not going to cut it for this crisis. The American people want deeper, fuller reporting.
The other thing is, journalists here in America, they really could help their fellow journalists in China if they were to, shine a light on what's happening there.
Absolutely. And that notion of transparency, which the press should be for, which you like to see in the Rose Garden, which you like to see in the briefing room, the president's doing his part, I would argue, it should be applied to China as well. It should be applied to these adversary nations. We can't give them a pass. And the media should not be the ones yielding, acquiescing, not holding their feet to the fire, or pointing out that China's numbers are not reliable. That should be a regular part of all their reporting on the numbers from China. I mean, we put asterisks after things in sports. Why isn't there a giant asterisk after all the Chinese statistics?
I like that. I'm going to make a graphic with a giant asterisk. Thank you so much, Ari Fleischer. Stay safe up there.